everyone. In today's favorite cities video, I'm going to talk about New York City. I have been to New York City quite a few times. I'm not exactly sure how many times. I think at least 6, and that's not counting times that I went there simply because I was on a train or a plane and I was changing planes or trains, like on my way someplace else. Because I think my dad and I went to New York on trains at least once or twice on our way somewhere on Amtrak. And I know at least once I changed planes in New York. I know when I went to Ireland when I was 17, I flew from Minneapolis to LaGuardia on one flight. And then we had to actually take a bus from LaGuardia over to JFK. And then we flew on from JFK to Dublin. So I'm not counting those times. The times I can think of that I went to New York, besides that, I went on that one trip I told you about in my Misadventures in Travel video, train crash, when I was with my cousin Trisha and my 3 friends from college. There was that time. Another time I went with my cousin Jenny and stayed with my friend Amy in her apartment. And then there was another time I went to visit Amy, but at that point she lived out like up in Westchester County a little bit, but I think we went into the city, and we also went to Atlantic City that time. She had a car at that point and we drove to Atlantic City. And then my friend Chris, which I didn't finish telling you about this in my London video. When I was studying in London in that big house, 2 houses that my university rented, there were about 30 of us from my university. There were about 30 students from State University, New York, Oswego, and there were about 30 students from Palm Beach Atlantic College in Florida. And we were all sharing the building. Now, one of my really good friends, Krista, from my school, went over to London at the same time as me. And I wanted to room together, but she plays the cello. She actually teaches cello now. And she needed a single room, so she could practice her cello. So she had requested a single room for that purpose, and so she got a single. And I ended up in a triple on the very top floor, which was a lot of stairs. And the bathroom was not on the same floor, so I had to go downstairs. We had sinks in our rooms, and then the toilets, just the water closet, if you will, were one separate thing with no sink in it, which was icky because you couldn't wash your hands. Were in one thing, and then the showers were completely separate in another place. So bathroom arrangements in that building were wacky. But I ended up in a triple with 2 girls who happened to be best friends. And so I really kind of felt like the odd one out when I lived there, because the good news was I got there first. I got to the building first, to London first. And so I got to first pick up the bed and the desk and all that. And I picked the single bed that was by itself, and they got the bunk beds. So, which was probably fine because they were best friends anyway. But because it was kind of awkward for me, because I was sharing this room with these 2 other girls that I didn't really know and who were best friends with each other and didn't really include me in anything, I would go down and like hang out with my friend Krista in her room, which was like a floor below me, in her single. And across the hall from her in another single was Chris, who was from SUNY Oswego. And he and I got to be really good friends. And he's the Chris that I mentioned that I went to hair with. He kind of became my theater buddy in London, because he really liked to go to theater like I did. I remember we went to Mousetrap too, and we probably went to at least a couple other things. I think we might have gone to a couple of movies too. I'm not sure. But anyway, we got to be really good friends. And after we got back from London, we kept in touch, and I went to visit him 2 or 3 times. He lived in Cornwall on Hudson, up the Hudson River from New York City. And I think every time I went to visit him, I stayed with him at their house with his parents. But I think we always went into the city. And he came here to visit me, well, twice. Once just for a visit, and then he actually was an usher in my wedding. So he came that time too, and he came with his then girlfriend, who is now his wife. So anyway, but because of my friendship with him and my friendship with my friend Amy, who's from my hometown and who just happened to move to New York City, most of the times I was out there, I was visiting a friend. And so I was doing stuff with them. And that gave me an excuse to go there and a reason to be in New York City. And then I know one other time was when Andrew was 2, and that was on the trip that I talked about in my video Lost Child, where we lost him at Niagara Falls. It was my dad and me and Andrew was 2. And after that incident in Niagara Falls, we went to New York City. And we visited Chris again that time too. And then have I been there since? No, I have not been there since. So it's been, oh gosh, almost 20 years since I've been in New York City. Is that right? Andrew's been there a couple times for school trips. But I guess I haven't. Wow. I can't believe it's been that long. Megan and Ben, again, this is another city that Megan and Ben have never been to, and so I really need to take them. I've been very strongly considering taking a cruise out of New York City. Morgan O'Brien from Morgan's Very Unofficial Travel Guides is on the Anthem of the Seas right now that went out of Cape Liberty, and it just looks really cool, the pictures he's posted and stuff about sailing out of there. So I kind of like to do that, or even one of the cruise lines that sails out of the actual Manhattan cruise terminal, I think would be cool. Again, another great theater city, so really want to take Megan because she's a big theater person and would love to take her to go to Broadway. Pretty much every time I went to New York City, I think I saw a Broadway show. I've done all the, typical New York City stuff. Top of the Empire State Building, Rockefeller Center, Central Park. Lots of Broadway, like I said. Been to the Statue of Liberty twice. Went to the top, up in the Crown. Ellis Island. I've never been to the UN. I would like to go and do the tour at the UN. One cool celebrity encounter. My cousin Trisha and I were walking down the street in Greenwich Village, and Matthew Modine and another guy were walking towards us, and I smiled at him and he said hi to me. And one time Chris and I went to a play that somebody famous was in. I can't remember what it was, and we stood outside the stage door to get their autograph afterwards. Can't remember what that was. I don't even remember all the Broadway shows I went to. Yeah, so New York is another cool one. I think, New York is just a really iconic city. There's a lot to see and do. There's a lot of history there too that, immigration especially, a lot of cool things. I'd really like to go to the Tenement Museum too. I've never been to that. Another great city with excellent public transportation, subways, buses, taxis. You can get around. You don't need a car in New York. Ooh, another place I really like visiting is the Cloisters. If you take the A train all the way north through Harlem, all the way to the end of the line and go to the Cloisters with the view of the Hudson River up there is just beautiful. Yeah, that's a really nice place to visit. I think I went there twice. I like that it's on, there's the rivers, the two, the Hudson River and the East River, and so it's an island and it's between the two rivers, and water always kind of adds a cool element to a city. And then, I don't know, it's just an exciting, cool, interesting city. Lots of great museums again. I've been to the Met, been to MoMA, probably some other ones I'm not remembering. And, I was going to tell you something. Oh, one of my favorite memories of visiting New York City is I was there with Chris, and he wanted to get his nipple pierced. This was in the 90s, and we were in our early 20s, and we were at a bar, and he was trying to psych himself up to get this done. we had gone to like places where they sold piercings, like, and they had like little tables out on the street, and we'd asked, where's a good place to get this done, because we wanted to go to a good place. And they gave us a card for a place in the village, and we went there, and, you know, I think he was having a drink to like psych himself up, and we went there, and I just decided on a whim, spur of the moment, to get my belly button pierced at the same time. I'm like, hey, I'll do it with you. And so I got my navel pierced, and I got a silver ring with a little green bead on it. I think I was 23 years old. And I remember that was when I was probably at my fittest and trimmest. And I remember when I had to like roll down my pants so he could get at my belly. And I remember when the piercing guy, you know, was like doing it, he goes, man, she's got them crazy curves. So that was flattering. And yeah, we did that. I got my belly button pierced. He got his nipple pierced. And then we went to a Broadway show that night. And I remember we were like in agony because it like burned and it hurt. And we couldn't stand to like have our clothes touch it. So we were sitting there like in the theater like, you know. And I think the next day was when we went on a sailboat ride with his dad on the Hudson River. And he didn't want his dad to know that he'd gotten this piercing, and so we were trying to like, again, not let anything touch it, but not let them know that we had gotten this done. So that was kind of funny. Other than that, I don't really have any distinctive memories of New York, but I would totally go back, and there's lots more I'd like to see, and I totally want to take my kids. So if you have some fun or interesting memories of New York, or some recommendations if I'm going to go back, where to stay, stuff that you like to do, leave them in the comments below. Thanks, guys. Safe travels.